through like Wikipedia and the Encyclopedia Britannica, abrogation is basically something revoking. Like, in other words, if I said, hey, I'm going to go drink a cola, but then when I go to the store, I said, I'm going to go get Pepsi instead. I add Coca-Cola for Pepsi. My question is, if God is, let me explain. Well, you'll teach what the policy of abrogation is, but so yeah, explain the policy of abrogation, and then follow it up with, if God is all-knowing, and thus the Quran is His message, why would His words need abrogated? Go ahead.
Okay, abrogation. This is actually a misunderstood thing within Islam, especially in reference to the Quran. Now, not very many verses in the Quran are abrogated. Many people think that there's 100. It's probably a little bit more than 20. And what abrogation actually means is not necessarily that yes, the verse itself is no longer applicable. However, it might be for the reason because to expound on the meaning of it, or to bring in, yes, in fact, a new for this actually is I'm going to just give an example of some of the abrogated verses. Since there is oh God, I can't remember the reference.
Everyone upload this to YouTube. Everyone record it.
For instance, there's a passage in the Quran. I can't remember the specific spot. If I can find it right now with you. But that states you should not come to prayer intoxicated. Okay. Now, if you read this verse by itself, it would suggest that that means drinking is allowed in Islam. Now, this verse was later abrogated, and then it was said that gambling and intoxicants are haram, meaning they're sin. You can't do them anymore. And it gives, and there's another passage in the Quran that says that we brought this Quran to you in steps. Now, the theological explanation behind this is that people need to grow into their religion. They need to, they can't just be forced to do everything at first. If Prophet Muhammad or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Arabs, oh, you guys need to stop drinking, all of a sudden, this is very hard to do. So the explanation behind that was basically, no, we're going to make sure you don't drink during certain times, and we're going to kind of ease your way out of it. So it's like a divine Alcoholics Anonymous.
So you were phasing the Quran into the culture over the course of 22 years.
Basically, you're phasing the religion. Yeah, you're phasing the religion and these requirements into the people, because people, by nature, and I think maybe you can agree with me on this, even without religion, they take time to do things. Habits take time to form. You can't just force somebody to stop doing something that they've been doing.
Yeah, that's true. Whenever YouTube
life
decides to make an update to their channel layouts or whatever, everybody has a cow. So you can imagine what it's like when there's changes made in the Quran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be the purpose of abrogation. But I often, and there was a question that was posed, obviously, towards your video in regards to the subject, and I don't know if you want me to touch up on it now or later, but since you brought it up.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Basically, it was also in reference to a lot of the violent verses in the Quran. Now, believe it or not, when I first read the Quran the first time, I really didn't understand what people were getting at. I read it, 3 times over before making my decision, and I didn't quite understand where people were coming from, saying, "Oh, this is just a violent book." Because a lot of the verses that I read in the Quran were very much about self-defense, especially in reference, and a lot of them were even in reference to war. And there's even one passage, Al-Baqarah, which is Surah 2, verse 190. That is not abrogated. It says very specifically, very directly, it says, you basically do not attack anybody unless they're fighting you, unless they attack you.
Yeah, a lot of the violent verses in the Quran are if-then statements that I have seen. In other words, if somebody does this, then you do that. So I definitely have seen that in the stuff that I've read in the Quran. But it's like, don't worry, I'm gonna pwn him. It's like this says, oh come on, Cabbie. No, I'm bringing the ownership to Blog TV. Okay. So basically, abrogation is basically phasing the Muslim religion, the Quran, in as you go. Is that pretty much
summed it up? I think that would be probably the best, most appropriate, response for that. I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Now, here's where the ownership comes in. This is going to be good. How do you explain the scientific errors of the Quran? For example, if you were to just Google scientific errors of the Quran, you'll find passages that allude to Earth being flat, with a canopy, dome type shape, the sun setting into mud. It pretty much teaches Earth as a center of the universe. Then there's things such as semen coming from the ribs and the spine instead of the huevos rancheros, as I like to call them. Q-Dragon knows what I'm talking about because he's got some big ones. And then other, like I said, I mean, there's a whole bunch if you just Google scientific errors in the Quran. My question is, if God created the world and sent the Quran as his message, why the lack of scientific knowledge? My basis is that basically, Muhammad, because see, as an atheist, my position is there is no Allah. My position is that Muhammad basically was just running with the limited knowledge of science and technology that he had at the time. The reason why the Quran says flat Earth is because everybody else was seeing flat Earth. That's what they knew. They didn't know about biobiology. There's also a passage in the Quran that talks about mountains are designed to protect against earthquakes, when in fact it's just, So anyway, go ahead.
Well, in reference to this, I mean, you'll hear a lot of Muslims bring up the scientific miracles in the Quran. To be honest with you, the Quran is very vague about specific scientific facts, and I'm going to get into this why. A lot of people are like, no, that's not true because the English says this. And this is where Muslims tend to say, no, you need to read the Arabic. And I would agree on this point. I'm not talking about the entire Quran, but on this point, because a lot of people have tried to infer particular interpretations of the Arabic by saying, this is what, and trying to mold it around specific scientific facts. The Quran is not a book of science. And for any Muslims that are in here right now, I just want to say that right now. The Quran is not a book of science. I'm sorry, I don't agree with Yaha. Okay, I think he's...
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I don't agree with Hoden Yaha. I don't like the fact that he tries to, say, oh, this is what the Quran does. I mean, I think he's created a huge problem in the Muslim world. And people listening to him have made this problem even more so. He's kind of basically brought about this very...
So you guys actually have a Kent Hovind on your side of the team?
I would call him that. I'm not saying he's not as bad as Kent Hovind in that sense. In the sense, he's done bad things. He's in jail. I mean, he's done some good things too. He writes very good theological stuff. To be honest, he's a good man. But the scientific knowledge, he doesn't need to be doing that. I'm sorry to spear him on this, but I can't agree with anything he says in regards to that. Now. My answer to that, for instance, like the mountains. Now, it would make no sense for a Prophet Muhammad to basically say that